Sweet. Okay, so we have our 2 halves. Okay, we have our 2 halves. We have the balls. We have our clay tool. We have our needle tool, which are a paper clip, and we have some water. Okay, what you're gonna do on the rim of each of your two sides, first you want to make sure that they actually fit together. These don't fit together. Come on. I have like 5 things to choose from, so I'm just gonna pick the 2 that actually fit. That one's too big. There we go. That's much better. All right, that's good enough. Okay, you're going to make sure they fit. You are going to slip and score both sides. So I'm going to take my needle tool, which is my paper clip, and I'm going to scratch up the rim on both sides. Okay, so I'm taking my paper clip, scratching the rim. I'm not digging like crazy, but you want to rough it up. And then once you have it all scratched up, you're going to slip it, which is just a little bit of water. Dip your finger in, and you're going to wet the edge. Now, if you wet the edge and your score marks kind of disappear, what I do is I wet the edge and then I go back and I rough it up again. Because now this water took that extra and those little bits of clay that you just scratched, and it made it into like a glue, like, which is this lip. So you really want to make sure your edge is nice and roughed up. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to do it to the other side too. Scratch, scratch, scratch. And don't be shy with the scratching, because what this does, it kind of creates a little bit of surface texture that the 2 halves can grip onto each other. Okay, if they don't have that grippiness with the scratching, then the slip is not gonna have anything to attach to. So I'm gonna take my water this side too. And again, if my scratches kind of disappeared, I'm just gonna scratch it up again. But you really wanna make sure that there's a lot of texture from those scratches and that the water is there to create that slip. Now, what do I have to do before I put these 2 things together?
Make sure they fit.
They did that already. Before I close this up, what do I have to do?
Cut holes.
Nope, after later. Anybody?
Make sure your beads are.
There you go. We gotta make sure our stuff is on the inside. So I'm gonna take my beads. I'm gonna place them on the inside. And again, since hopefully if you guys left them to sit out for a minute, then they're not gonna be super, super sticky. But they will not stick to each other because they're not slip and scored together. Okay, I'm gonna take my 2 halves. I'm going to place them together. And I'm going to push gently until I see slip kind of coming out the outside. Now I'd recommend you try and keep those balls on one end and away from the middle, because that's where your slip is going to be. And if they catch some slip, then they could attach together. Okay, so now I have this nice closed form. Okay. Okay. Water. Yep. Oh, did I not give you water? I'm sorry. Okay. So you want to make sure that those 2 sides are nice and attached together. Now what am I going to do? Smooth it over. So I'm going to take my tool. And do you remember what the action is like? It is like, what is the action that I'm going to be using to scrape along the side of my piece? No? Who remembers I equated it to a food? No.
That's what I was going to say.
Buttering bread.
Oh,
buttering bread. Okay? So when you are buttering like a piece of toast, you are not stabbing the knife into the toast. You are scraping the butter across the toast. That is what you need to do. So you're going to take your tool. So what I like to do is I like to hold my tool with like my thumb kind of on the back of it. And I'm going to push and kind of pull and drag the clay on both sides. So if you look, try and do this as best I can. So here's my seam. I'm going to scrape. I'm going to scrape back and forth across. I'm not digging down and pushing hard. You guys can see that that's now nice and blended. Okay, but I'm going to go across that seam to blend it. You're not pushing down, you're going across. If you push into that seam, it'll bust open or it'll make a hole. So you got to make sure that you're cradling your piece. You're trying to be gentle. Again, you're going across the clay. You are not digging into it. Okay. And you really want to make sure that this seam is together. Okay. Okay. So my seam is there. And if I listen, I can hear my things are on the inside. If they dry out a little bit, they'll shake around a little bit more. But for right now, I know they're in there. I heard that they were loose, so that should be good. But now I have this nice shape. What are we at here? 11:30? Oh, perfect. What's up? No. Nope. You're just using the wood. So you're using the carved, the rounded part on the other side, and you're scraping back and forth across that seam. So if you guys look at my piece, I have this nice sphere. Boop boop bop. Well, I guess I gotta decide what I want my rattle to be. Oh geez. Oh man. No. You know, I was thinking of having it be like a pearl and then having like an octopus or something around the outside. That'd be crazy. I don't know. A little complex. I'm what you like to call a try-hard. That's what I am.
That's what I was in school art. That's why I ended up with all these.
Okay, so I have this nice form. You guys do not have to put a hole in it right now, because if you think about it, your piece, you're gonna be adding clay to it. You need to make sure that hole is at the end before we fire it, because so it won't explode. But also, if you add clay on top of this, if you make the hole now and then you cover it up later, then you think you have a hole, but then you don't. So we'll make sure that we have the hole at the very end. But what's nice now is that this air is trapped on the inside here. You can actually kind of like form and mold this pinch pot gently, because that air on the inside kind of gives a little bit of a like, it'd be like, it's like a bubble in there. Yeah, like a bubble. So if like I think about like a balloon, when you press in the balloon, that air is still in there. So you can use that to like change the shape. So I just made this more potato-y shaped, or my egg shaped, just by gently kind of pressing and making sure that that seam is still very much closed. Okay, so there's my little start to my rattle. Okay, my nice hollow thing on the inside. Okay, so now from here, you guys will execute your idea and start thinking about what kind of shapes you can break your piece up into. Like, and I'm gonna say, if you have any, I didn't want to give this to too many people, like tell you guys, well, let me explain. Sorry, that was words that I just kept talking. Let's say, Nathan, I'm gonna use yours as an example, one of your pieces, the clown.
Yes.
Okay, so listen, if I had this, if I was gonna do a clown, just pretend, and then my clown has a hat on, okay, all right, ready, look over here. So this is my rattle, correct? This is a hat. I could make this hat out of like a flat piece and like make it a cone. So then I could make this cone hollow. I could make this hollow. What I could do is I could then chop off the top of my rattle, my sphere. attach this to this. So now the beads that are inside my thing can not only go in here, but they can also go up into the hat. Does that make sense? Sort of?
Yeah.
So like if I wanted to add something, if I wanted to add an element and then add to the hollowness of the piece, I could cut and then reattach something else. But I need to make sure that those two pieces are, the seam is together. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes, does that make sense? Okay. So you don't have to do this, but if you add an element that's hollow, you could, because then it gives you like a more of a space to for the stuff to bang around in. But also if I had this hat was hollow on top of here, now I have an air pocket in here. If this were solid and then this were hollow, I need to make sure I have a hole in the hat to make sure that the air from the hat comes out. Okay? Wherever there's an air pocket, you need to make sure there's a hole. Okay? Or try not to have an air pocket. All right? So from here, if you didn't finish your sketches, finish them. If you know what you want to do, get started. Just you can go. Remember, everything you add onto your piece has to be slip and scored. Okay? I would suggest maybe like if I were going to do, I really don't have any ideas. Considering the fact that I looked at everybody else's sketches, I still have no ideas. If I wanted to make like a dog or something like that, you know, I might start with like a piece. You know, I might start with like a piece, I'll slip and score it, and I'll smooth it out, and then try to form it and shape it. Okay? So you could start with like kind of a big piece of clay, like a lump, but then you can go back in and refine it. Okay? So that's kind of how I do it. Just pay attention that you're not adding so much clay on the outside, because you don't want a 2.5 pound rattle, okay, which is how much clay you have. So I'd say use your clay a little at a time to build that shape. And again, if you can alter your shape of your piece before you start adding clay to it, then I would do that too. So like, you know, squeezing it and getting it to the shape that you want as a base would be helpful. So you guys have, I'm gonna say 20 minutes, because then we'll start cleaning up, but you can start working. Okay, so if you didn't finish your sketches, finish them. And if you did, then you can get going and start working. Okay, so these rattles are, you want to have them at least be 5 inches